Hello and welcome to Enhance Excellence. I'm Judith Saxton, and I'm an advocate and an ambassador for mindfulness and bodyfulness as related to music making, trumpet playing, and life. I have been teaching for about 34 years, music educator for that time, and a performer, and I'm going to be pulling on different various disciplines: Tai Chi, mindfulness, my core studies with Arnold Jacobs and Vince Chikowitz and Will Scarlett in the Chicago school tradition, and my Alexander Technique background as well. I'm a registered somatic movement educator, which simply means that I am very interested in inhabiting the body for myself and for everyone that I work with around the world who is endeavoring to be a great instrumentalist and a great musician, because our body is our instrument and our body and brain are connected. So that's what we're all about. We're going to have, I'm going to set my timer so I stay on track. We're going to have about 6 different sections, and we're going to have like I said in my teaser, this is 80% experiential. And so we're going to have a lot of up and down and movement and times when we're all experiencing things at the same time, although we're watching this possibly at different times. But for those of you that are watching it during the ITG conference, I will be there live, and I encourage you to write in the chat. I would be super excited about being able to respond and interact with you live in that manner, and perhaps get some conversation back and forth. And sometimes I'll allow a little pausing for that. And pausing is good for almost anything. So that's part of what we'll do. So we'll get started here with our Enhance Excellence. If you may see my foster dog Barkley come in and out of the picture. I'm not sure. Hopefully he'll work it out and he won't wrap himself around the table too many times. Okay. So we are all coming out of COVID, and I think it's important to address that because we've been in this very different kind of shutdown time where we've been interactive with screens and less personal interaction, less social interaction for many of us. Certainly our means of communication through our instrument in the normal way with normal sized and audiences situated in a space is all different. The isolation and much of the grief we need to kind of recognize and acknowledge. And I want to start by saying that we can reshape our nervous system for wholesome social engagement. We're going to work with that initially. And the reason I think that's directly related to trumpet, is that what is wholesome social engagement except the language of music and the fact that we've all chosen trumpet as being our primary amplifier and method of communication of our hearts and our minds and our souls. And so we want to engage with our pianists, our chamber partners, our section mates, our audience, whether it be a congregation of a church, our jury, our judges of a competition. We want to engage and communicate, and we can reshape our nervous system in order to do that wholesome social engagement. How? First, we come to quiet, because we very briefly acknowledge that we've all been through a long tunnel of grief, and at various times we are starting to emerge. This will be available for 60 days after the June premiere, and by that time, hopefully we will have all emerged quite a bit more. We can hope and look forward to that. But it's important to kind of acknowledge where we are in this moment before we go any farther, and just bring our whole selves to this moment. And we can do that through a variety of centering options. One is grounding. And that's simply, if I'm going to continue to sit, I will find my sit bones, or I call them my butt feet. At the bottom of my butt, I can just place my hand underneath my buttocks on either side, and boom, there's my sit bones. I can feel them against the hardness of my chair surface. I can feel my heels on the ground and my toes uncurling. I can be centered on the ground and grounded. Mother Earth, Father Sky. I've chosen to do this outdoors in my back deck here in Winston-Salem in early April because it's in the 80s and it's an absolutely beautiful day. And what is this but an embodied seminar about enhancing our excellence by revealing our inner resources? So we are first coming to quiet, and I will stand up and we can do a little bit of that grounding while we stand. Just being aware that, for Isaac Newton said, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So just my weight on the ground is giving me a natural up. I don't need to hold myself up. My body is organized to come up in the spirals that are the musculature and skeleton of my body. There is no straight bones in my body, so I'm getting a beautiful spiraling up from the ground. And we also can gain some energy from the sky, from the heavens above. So we first do that to come to quiet. We can breathe in and out 3 times, once through our nose, inhalation, and then exhaling through our mouth. Inhaling through our nose at any speed that's comfortable. Just noticing the sensations of the wind going in. You might feel it in your nose or in your abdomen area. And the 3rd time, breathing in and just letting everything fall away. We are in this moment, and we are letting this moment happen just as it is and accepting it as it comes. So we do all this to self-regulate. To self-regulate first is to become self-aware. We do so much in front of ourselves, including the trumpet, that I just want to take a quick moment to recognize that we do have a back, and we want to be aware of our wingspan, because that very musculature that makes wings also is what holds up the trumpet. The huge diamond back muscles, the latissimus dorsi coming out of the bottom area of the spine, hooking into the trapezius muscles from the top of the spine and the neck. And that's what holds up the trumpet. So if you have a trumpet handy, it's not held up by your hand or by your wrist or by your elbow or by your arm or at the shoulder. That hooks into the back, and you have the whole muscles of the back giving you the weight of the trumpet. You can feel the weight of the trumpet transferring right into the ground. So here we are, self-regulated, coming to quiet, able to be aware of ourselves. Just want to say that we are constantly in movement. We don't do movement. We are in movement every moment that I'm speaking. Actually, from the 6 weeks of gestation, we are vibrating and all our cells are moving. All our cells are moving. And we also carry emotions as part of our self-regulation. Everything is energy. Everything around me is energy. I am energy. Everything I'm sitting on, everything is energy. And emotions are energy in motion. So whatever emotions you might be having right now, we want to take those energy in motion and let them travel through and go out of our body. Perfect. We're finishing this section. Let me write that down. That's section number 1. Boom. So those emotions are leaving our body, and I'd like us to do a little creative, innovative, imaginative movement exercise of you moving whatever emotions you might feel right this minute. You might be relieved to be here. You might be full of ennui and annoyance. You might be hopefully not bored, but who knows? Whatever is fine, move the emotions. So I'm feeling settled and happy and filled with gratitude to be able to offer this to you and to recognize there's a reciprocal exchange of communication, both musically, as we get to that, and with some concepts and ideas that will fuel our music. So I'm feeling very circular, and I'm just making this motion that's coming out of how I'm feeling emotionally right now. And we're doing this just literally to get into our body a little more and to let any emotions pass through, and we're self-regulating. I'm making this up, so this is just literally something I want you to play with. Have this attitude of play and curiosity throughout this entire presentation. We don't have to be our feelings. We can feel the feeling and let it go. Feel the feeling and let it go. All part of that self-regulation, which allows us to then come into co-regulation, or be in relation to our co-conspirators in music. You know, conspirator means, that word spire means to inspire, bring in the spirit or the breath. So co-conspirators are people that are breathing with you, that are in a spiritual communication of music with you. We are co-regulating and is initially self-regulating, just as in that old adage, put on your mask during your plane flight, put on your oxygen mask first so that you may deal with what you need first so that you can then help the other person. If you don't take care of yourself first, you may pass before the other person even gets your help. So self-regulation first, then co-regulation. Once we get to the co-regulation, let me reset this. Okay. Moving on to the second section, we have our mindset and body groove, which is a little bit more riffing on mindfulness and bodyfulness. We've come to quiet. We must rest because we cannot begin any work if we're exhausted. Just want to underline that again. I mentioned everything is energy. Pausing allows for our energy to get unstuck in our habitual grooves. So we have grooves of habit that have been formed from when we were little children and by what people said and how we took in what was said about ourselves and our playing and our music making. Allowing for a little pause allows for something new and different and more of our resources that we can acknowledge and recognize to possibly come a little closer to the surface, and therefore we can choose to not just dive right in quickly, which usually brings up habits. And some habits are great and needed, absolutely. We're talking about the excess work that some habits have, and we want to shed any of those. A lot of this process is an undoing and a shedding, like an onion skin, an unpeeling of habits. And that pausing, when we're doing our self-regulation and when we are in relationship to our instrument, the music, and others and with whom we're making music, allows for some more possibilities to arise and more of ourselves to come into making the music together. Okay, so we're going to go on to the coolest part, which is asking questions. So there are 3 kinds of questions that actually literally physically initiate and activate our neurotransmitters, which again, going back to our opening part, allow us to reshape our whole nervous system for wholesome social engagement. So those neurotransmitters are dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. So the first, dopamine, is activated by our curiosity, by our wondering, by our inquisitiveness. I wonder what would happen if I pick up my trumpet with a hand that's not my normal hand. I wonder what would happen if I put my third valve finger on first, and then my second, and then my first, and I transfer my weight to my left hand, and I feel it going all the way into my sit bones and into my feet. I wonder what would happen if I bring the trumpet up and instead of playing right away, I exhale first. You know, I'm just coming up with questions, but I wonder what would happen if. Or what would it be like for me to transfer the weight of the trumpet from one side to the other? What do I find is most convenient for how I want to play the trumpet? I mean, there's so many ways of asking questions that are explorative and bring out a sense of wonder. And when we do that, we increase our dopamine. We open ourselves up to possibilities and some nice open expectations. We create a sense of optimism, and we definitely open up a little more to our resources. We're trained often to focus, and we can get a little narrow, so that questioning opens us up to the fact that we're in the world, I'm feeling the wind, and we just get a little more of ourselves to bring to the equation of making music. And when we have more of ourselves, we work less. We bring more resources and innate coordination between our body and brain, and we end up playing with more ease and efficiency. So, the next type of question is, what is my purpose? What is my purpose in my practice session? What is my purpose in my performing? And how am I going to connect that purpose to create a connection with my audience? So it's a purpose and a connection. So my purpose might be, I'm going to play the most thoughtful, provoking, slow, meditative, powerful Chikowitz flow study. Actually, that was a Clark study, number 2, because I heard my little pup doing some little barking, so I hope he's okay. So my purpose changed at the last minute, but so I'm creating a purpose which is allowing me to connect with the music and with you, because my purpose is very clear. That hooks me into oxytocin, which is related to the oxy that's been a huge issue with people taking too much as a drug, because it allows us to feel amazing. Like when I pet my foster dog, I get a flood of oxytocin. You get the same flood by creating a purpose for every segment of your practice session and for every part of your performance. That purpose creates connection to what you intend to do, and then that creates a language and a direct communication with the audience. All of that creates connection with the audience, which highlights that release of that neurotransmitter oxytocin in your brain. The third that we're going to mention today is mastery. Mastery is hooked into serotonin, another powerful neurotransmitter. You may be working with young students, or you may be a young student yourself, or a comeback player. And if so, I'm going to reset that. Perhaps I'll play my B-flat trumpet here in case I'm addressing those communities. And I'm just going to play an F, because I'm going to master playing an F. I'm going to do it in a time frame always. So this F, I think, is about here, but I'm going to try to get the pitch first. So I was very close. Now I'm going to play one F, but I'm going to cue it in time using a tempo. So I had mastery over that one note. You might think that's not much mastery, but it's incredibly complex to play one note with beautiful tone, articulation, and release. I'm going to do 3 in a row now, and I'm going to put it in a tempo. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to master doing the same thing at half that volume. So I've created mastery through obvious, slow, clear, smart, educated repetitions of what I want to do. That 10,000 hours we talk about, repetitions of what we want to be doing. So that releases serotonin. So those neurotransmitters are what allow us to get past our COVID brain, get into our body, connecting the body and the brain with how we think, how we move, linking our thinking to our movement and our intention and purpose and inquisitive curiosity and wonderment on the trumpet as we practice and as we perform. So it's not just a matter of putting it up and going through the motions and checking out with our brain. We want to keep the brain in gear the entire time. So time for another little break. I'm going to drink some water out of my ITG mug. I encourage you to stand up because the next section is going to work just briefly with words. 4-letter words. This next section, my favorite 4-letter words, some of you know because I've been doing some of these presentations around the globe and in many university situations. We have wait, stop, rest, and time. These are not words we often equate with playing the trumpet, but they can be very, very helpful words. Again, all related to that pausing and giving ourselves time and space and honoring the sacredness of our practice space and certainly of our performance time and space. My next 3 4-letter words, I'm going to sit back down. That's going to be our little brief, light and lively, just standing up and sitting down, is sing, buzz, play, which of course relates to myself and my pedagogy and coming out of the Chicago tradition. Singing the pitch, buzzing the pitch on my mouthpiece, and playing it through on the instrument. The last 2 of my favorite 4-letter words are ease, which is on the back of my license plate, and slow. Again, things we want to invite into each practice session, and in order to bring a sense of, you could say right now, where else am I feeling ease in my body? Where else am I feeling ease in my body? Because we generally notice where we feel dis-ease or pain. And by noticing ease in our body, we recognize, I've got spaces that are fantastically feeling fine. I can bring those spaces of ease and I can invite them to come into where I feel more dis-ease. Similarly, we obviously want to play with as much ease as possible. Trumpet is the most challenging physical instrument in the whole orchestra. It does require a lot of alacrity, energy, enthusiasm, and skill and technique, but we want to be doing that with as much efficiency and ease and the least amount of work required. The most to get the note out, the least required so that we're not overusing it, overusing ourselves. If you meet resistance, don't try harder, try less. And my last 2 favorite 4-letter words are less is more. Less is often more. And we're going to talk a little bit about that when we get to the playing portion in just a few minutes. One more thing about words. I don't allow the words can't in my studio. And also, if you tell yourself don't do something, your brain does not read not. So if you don't see the orange elephant with the pink saddle and a green rear end, good luck with that. So the brain does not read not, so we need to give it instruction when we do use words to give ourselves instruction on how we're going to play the next phrase, or what our plans and intentions are for the next etude, or that beautiful solo piece, or that excerpt, or that jazz transcription. We want to give ourselves positive motion activated words that do not have not in them. Instead, they have what you want to do. So you're setting your intention and again your purpose, getting more of those neurotransmitters going. And another quick reminder that we have ways to remember words. We have the words remind, to get back into our mind, and remember, to bring our members of our body into ourselves. Reminding and remembering is a beautiful way, in at least the Latin-based languages, to recognize that our language is even telling us to inhabit our body and our mind. So when your teacher says, remember this, you can always go, oh yeah, I'm going to be in my whole body right when they say that. Or let me remind you, and you're like, oh yes, my body and my brain are connected, and my mind is really part of my whole spinal cord, and I'm going to be connected. So it's just a way of, you can use those words as little place cards and cues to remind and remember that we are a whole person when we go to play the trumpet. Okay, we're up to 5 already. So I think we should take a little pause here. I'm moving quickly because, as you might imagine, this was not the first time I made this recording. There we go. That's the 3rd. Okay. I made a recording, and even though I thought I had enough space, the phone ran out of space, and then I had to wait, and it didn't have enough battery power. So Interstate 40 behind me is getting a little louder because we're getting a little bit more towards rush hour. Even during COVID times, people are back to work. So, and hopefully this is a time for you to kind of gather yourselves and think, I wonder where she's going with all this, or I didn't understand this, or just ask some questions in the chat, or bring me some observations of how you feel this might relate to your teaching or your performing, or how you work with younger or older, or students on the cusp of a recital or audition. I'm happy to, again, for those of you that are live, to write into the chat. Okay, so we've gone over how it's important to ask questions in terms of activating those neurotransmitters that are so powerful and that are ways of getting us engaged to be socially communicative once again. Next, we're going to go to using our imagination. So right now I'm going to imagine a new Light and Lively, and I'm going to step sideways and just do a little King Tut coming towards you. And I'm doing something backwards with my hand, palm up in the back, palm down in the front. And I'm going to reverse those as I come back. So now I'm palm down in the back and palm up in the front. Then I'm going to switch. I'm going to go palm up in the front, palm down in the back. And then I'm going to switch that and go palm down in the front, palm up in the back. Hopefully I switched it. And I'm going to go out to the side like I'm pushing out water. Bring the water in and down. Allow those shoulders and arms to release the weight of the world. And we'll go on to the 5th part of 6th. So, imagination. Imagination is the great overcomer. One other word I don't permit in my studio is perfect or perfection. There is no perfect. There is no permanent. Nothing is perfect. Nothing is permanent. Perfect implies a certain specific place and time and place, like our bodies, are always in motion, and everything is moving, everything is changing all the time. So if you go for excellence, that's your excellence at that moment. It takes out some of that judgment that can happen by trying to be perfect. Also, that excellence allows you to aim for something within that moment, and that perfection can easily lead to analysis by paralysis or even some rigidity. So we're always wanting to be in a flow, and inviting in excellence allows for some flow to happen. So I mentioned that under this imagination portion because I think it takes imagination to imagine your excellence. Perfection is kind of a set standard in our brains, but imagine your excellence. And as you know, those of you that are jazz players, and certainly those that are classical players, need to embrace this concept as well. The best thing to do is to copy or imagine your favorite soloist, your favorite player. So if I were to imagine that I were Bud Herseth playing the opening of Pictures at an Exhibition Promenade, I would have to sit like Herseth, who's a very compact man. I'd hear him playing it. I'd hear him starting it there in Orchestra Hall in Chicago. So I'm simply calling on my experiences hearing Bud both in recordings and live, and I became Bud, which opened me up to not thinking about what you would think, not judging myself. I'm being Bud. I'm imagining that I'm Bud Herseth. It takes me in a good way out of my small concept of who I am and opens me up to what I'm capable of doing. So there's one way of using your imagination, is to imagine your very favorite player on each different thing you play. You can pull up your favorite player. So if I'm going to play a movie sound score, I might be Tim Morrison. If I'm going to play some other sort of music, I might be another kind of trumpet player. So there's two obstacles when we're pursuing our passion for our future aiming of where we want to be on the trumpet and as a musician. Two obstacles. The first is the failure of nerve, or the failure to have courage. I go here for courage because the word courage comes from the Latin cœur. Le cœur is the heart in French. Coraggio in Italian. Courage, a lack of courage, or the willingness to commit to vulnerably sharing our heart. The lack of nerve is our first obstacle to creating our passion. And the second obstacle is a lack of imagination. So we need, the mind of an adult begins in the imagination of a child. So you've often heard, well, especially my teachers, Arnold Jacobs for one, and along the way many others, we need to be thinking like a child here, more childlike, with that simple simplicity, that belief in yourself, how what you have to say is the best thing, and we can imagine out of that mind. It gives us, I believe the imagination leads the courage. There's an argument to be made, it works both ways, but we need to dispel of both of those impediments and encourage coraggio and imagination in order to gain our passion. I encourage imagination with my students by having them play by ear as much as possible. Patriotic tunes, things they might have heard in the church, nursery rhymes. It does not have to be complex. And the easiest key to start with, branching out in as many keys as possible. I always say to play the scale and the arpeggio of the key first to get you in, set up so that you're fully oriented. So if I'm going to play a little My Country 'Tis of Thee, or America, God Save the Queen, I believe it is, for those Brits listening, I'm going to be in the key of G major. And I'm going to set up my tempo. And I'll skip the scale right now because I just did the scale. 2, 3. in the chords and I'm playing something very simple, something I know well, and I'm able to start, maybe with a couple bars of that, start where you are, start using your imagination, connecting your hearing, your singing, your pitch to the fingers by knowing your scales, knowing your arpeggios, and starting on really easy tunes. It's a great way of amping up your imagination and gaining confidence all at the same time. I do a lot of other things with students, jazz related and harmony, playing harmony, teaching them to play harmony by taking the chords and writing out, the first, fourth, fifth. Usually most of our conconis and various easy pieces are only using 1, 4, and 5 chords. And then you can start playing the bass just like you would learn a jazz tune, moving on to thirds and sevenths. So development of the ear, utilizing every single thing in your life as part of your imagination. I can look at the green grass and play something that sounds like green grass. Green grass, green grass, I'd like to see some green grass. I mean, really, it's just you using your brain. So, we're gonna move on to the 6th section, which is putting it all into music. I've done a little bit of that, but here's some practical, pragmatic practice tips. See if I can remember. Yes. There's my little puppy. He's about ready for a break. But we're going to see if we can get through these last 10 minutes. Okay, puppy. So, his name is Barkley. We are going to play a little bit of this gorgeous book by Mark Doolin and Mike Chikowitz, Vince's son. It is the first Flow Studies Volume 1. There's 2 or 3 other ones, and I was very privileged to be and honored to be one of the folks that we performed on these, and we wrote up a little thing so you can hear us playing these pieces, those of us that are students of Chikowitz. And I am going to play this with metric pulse. I've already set up my practice room to have a yes bin and a no bin. So there's no judgment. If I mess something up, it simply goes in the no bin. Keeps it very objective, keeps judgment out of it. We have to be very kind to our hearts, full of self-compassion, so that we can bring all our resources to the fore and they don't feel betrayed. So here we are. I'm going to switch out my glasses to my music reading glasses. I'm on number 1. It's a Lütgen, and I apologize to my German friends if I've said that wrong. It's a Lütgen study. It's in 2/4. So again, using metric pulse, strong, weak, strong, weak. 1, 2, 1, 2. I make my technique better. I allow my technique to fly out easier by structuring the music very clearly based on musical principles, which is this phrasing that we get starting with, Mozart and Haydn. And we generally don't get it as early as string players get that from age 5 on. So we have to remind ourselves as brass players, yes, we need metric pulse. Yum, 1 and a 2, strong, weak, 1 and a 2. I am leading da 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 dee. So it leads, the beat 2 leads to the next one. You'll see. 1. Oh, I skipped the thing because of my shield. Sorry about that. That was in the no bin. No judgment. Starting again. So you can hear my long emphasis on beat 1 and my lightning on beat 2. And it tells my body exactly what I want to do, and I'm playing it musically, so technically it's easier. Moving on to the fantastic book that Chikowitz used, Ernest Williams' Method of Scales. Many of the scales begin on the 5th tone, and it creates just a nicer way to work in that key. And I'll just pick maybe E major. I'll go back to, I guess I'm on my B flat trumpet, okay? And I'm going to work with some articulation now, but I'm doing it through a linguistic approach. Ta 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 ta. So I'm singing all on ah. I'm not going ta 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 ta, because that changes the oral cavity inside my mouth, which makes it different when it doesn't need to be different. I want to make it as easy as possible for the wind to get to my chops, to get to the buzz on the mouthpiece and create the vibration for the sound. Ta 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 ta. And I can use the whistle tones. I can do it on the back of my hand, bringing in all my senses, or you can use your blowing on a piece of paper. This is a very thick piece of paper. We'll see if it moves. So you're using your senses to ensure the wind is present. And I've got that. It's in 2/4 still, so I've got that sense of metric pulse. Sorry, I just couldn't see it. That could go in the no bin, but I don't need to play it again. You get the idea. So I'm setting everything up. Before I begin, I've got a clear tempo, the structure throughout every lesson that I teach, and all of my practice is very, very structured, so there's no question as to when to play, as rhythm is our most fundamental element. I will grab this music. This is my final selection. We're now going to do some double tonguing. And everybody thinks, this is a very technical thing. And I just want to show that this is definitely something we do through musical means. So we are connecting the articulations. You'll see every time I play that I'm moving. We're connecting the articulations through the breath. Long breath. Less tongue, more wind. There's a lot of wind because wind equates with vibration, which equates with sound. So, taka taka ta, taka taka ta, taka taka ta, da da da. Now I'm going to put the same thing in 3/4, and you'll hear the different metric pulse. Taka taka ta, taka taka ta, taka taka ta, da da da. Knock that down. Okay, and now I'm going to go twice as fast. I'm not going to do it until I'm sure of the tempo. Da 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 da. So you can hear that pulse. You can hear the connection of the breath. The tongue is just flapping in the breeze. Okay. Let's go on to 2 articulations per note. And we'll be in, I'll put it in 4. Daga 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 da. Daga 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 da. Daga 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 da. So I'm going 1E into 2E into 3. 1E into 2E into 3. So there's connection. If you're not comfortable singing, you can hum it, you can whistle it, or just the whistle tones I told you about. Okay, so I'm having fun because everything is chunked. Musically, I've mapped out my phrasing ahead of time. I know my intention, my purpose. My musical message is clear. I've mapped everything out. You know, there's that 7th cranial nerve that takes the message right down to either your vocal cords or your chops. So it's clear. I know when to play. It's joyous, and it's not like I'm having to play technique, and it's no fun. So creating and upping the music and the imagination makes for a lot of fun, it makes for a lot of connection to the audience, makes for great communication, makes for ease and efficiency in your playing. And I just think allowing music to bridge the mind to the body. Once you're playing musically, you'll see people play much less stiffly, much more movement, less rigidity, more freedom and flow. My studio, which anyone is welcome to study with me online or come to Winston-Salem, is called Free Flow Studios. And when you play with a beginner's mind, you bridge the knowing and the doing gap. So beginner's mind, if you know what you want to do, but you don't know how to do it, and you just say, what if I start with, and what if I just aim for excellence at this easy thing, and then you have this idea that I'm a beginner and I'll just see where I go. It creates a different mindset, which puts you into the body groove. Body groove is a good thing. So those are some ideas and concepts of being aware of the power of words, see if I forget anything else, and imagination. And I don't want to run out of time, and I want to leave a little space during our online time for questions, and I'm thinking I'm out of time almost already. So I'm going to thank International Trumpet Guild very much. I'm honored to be able to present this virtual presentation on enhancing your excellence, enhance excellence through your body-brain connection. And I also want to really thank my sponsor, Selmer. Bach trumpets. Yes, this is my Bach B flat and my Bach C and my Bach mouthpiece. And Uli Salazar, who is the artist relations person at Selmer. So thank you very much for joining me on my hopefully final version of this virtual presentation for the International Trumpet Guild 2021 virtual conference. Thanks for your attendance, and I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. May you enjoy your practice and enhance your excellence in these fun and invigorating imaginative ways. Thank you.